So I always knew I wanted to be a teacher. I've been teaching since I was 17, various subjects at a volunteer basis or otherwise. And I actually started as an art teacher at a senior center. When I was a teenager, I just volunteered as an art instructor. So I always knew I was going to be a teacher, and so I saw this opportunity to go abroad to Austria to be a teaching assistant. And I always wanted to live in the Alps. I had this romantic notion of living in the Alps and being like on a farm, because I'm from Seattle, so I wanted to like get my hands dirty and like work on a farm. So I actually did. I got this position as a teaching assistant, but before I started that, I worked on a farm for a month in Tyrol, which is the middle of the Alps, and I had a very fascinating experience, somewhat traumatic experience, not because of the work, because of the people. Yeah, so that really disillusioned me as far as my idealized notion of the Alps, but they're still beautiful, and I had an amazing experience living for 2 years in Austria, and a lot of culture shocks, a lot of realizations of what made me American that had absolutely nothing to do with politics or religion or big cars or people or things we stereotypically associate with those countries for America. So I actually studied French in college because it was pretty. I didn't think much of German until I studied German philosophy, and I got really into the depth of the ideas and just the way that Germans seem to think. And like I said, I was not attracted to the language particularly at first, but something that had always bothered me about French is that I realized after I got somewhat fluent in French that I liked hearing myself talk too much because it was too pretty. So I was listening to myself talk and not actually participating in a really grounded way in a conversation. So when I learned German, it was a relief because it was just like a practical language. It didn't sound particularly pretty, but it was amazing in the way that the sentences were constructed, how the grammar was constructed. Because for those of you who know a little bit of German grammar, you know that you have to think a little bit differently in order to put German sentences together correctly. And once you get to a more advanced level, you can see how that way of thinking is also really good for things like philosophy and poetry and literature, and it's fascinating. I studied German. This is also connected to why I got into German in the first place. So I did study German philosophy at Reed College in Portland. So I'm from Seattle originally. I came to Oregon for college in Portland. And then I went abroad 2 years after college, working abroad as a teaching assistant in Austria, in Innsbruck and Salzburg. And after that, I went to graduate school at the University of Oregon. And then, thank goodness, the year right after I finished grad school, so I got my master's in June of 2010, and they were already looking for instructors at OSU for that next academic year, so I got the job. Absolutely. Students, especially students learning a foreign language, really need to study abroad because it makes the language living for the first time. I mean, as far as you guys are concerned, I could be teaching you an alien language that nobody really speaks, right? But it's only when you go abroad and you see it being spoken all around you and you see those cultural kind of tics and tendencies living around you that it becomes a real experience. And I can tell you that the students who I've had the honor to see abroad, which are just a few, like when I've been abroad for seminars and I've seen students, not only is their German so much better, but they're just so much more grown up. Because honestly, studying abroad, as amazing as it is also amazing because it's full of struggle. And struggling grows you up. I mean, it challenges you, it really makes you into an adult, and their posture is so great, and they're so much more confident because they know that they can handle the kinds of testing of their boundaries of every kind that it takes to study abroad. So it's an amazing life experience, I think, as many people should have as possible. So I selected and ordered all the textbooks. I decided what to use for first and second year. I decided how those courses were basically going to look and how they were going to be organized and wrote the schedules for them that are used by all the instructors. I am the webmaster and the Facebook group moderator and generally the social media person for German at OSU. And part of that is I did create the Hammer Grammar videos, which are a comprehensive series of 33, totals about 7 hours videos, and each video is like a whiteboard animation of me giving a fun, humorous lecture on a particular topic in German grammar or pronunciation. Students have found those really useful, and actually the publisher of our textbook, Langenscheidt, has also shown those videos abroad in Germany to an international audience. So it's definitely creating a stir, and because this is just the future of education for students, because you guys want fast, pretty, accessible, everywhere kinds of education that's actually free to everybody. So I think this kind of open source education that's available online is definitely the future. So that's another part of our expansion. So Hammer Grammar was a project that, like a lot of creative projects, came out of a place of frustration because last summer I taught online for the first time, and as somebody who really values interpersonal contact, being close to students, knowing where they're at, it was very frustrating for me to not have any of that in the online classroom. And in addition, it was really frustrating for me that I couldn't give students a clearer idea of grammar topics that I would get from, for example, doing a little mini lecture in class, right, or writing something on the board, because I can't do that in an online classroom, right? And so students were just left with the textbook, and our textbook, as wonderful as it is, doesn't give a lot of explanation for grammar topics. And so students were coming to me in the online class, sending emails and being very frustrated because they were like, I'm supposed to use the accusative case. I don't really know what it is. I've seen these patterns show up in the book, but I don't really know what the structure is behind it. What is it? And so I knew that I wasn't willing to sacrifice time in the classroom, like for my campus classes, to really speak a lot in English. And so I was wondering how to do that with my online classroom too, and maybe do something that I could use in both the online and the campus classes. So I realized that in order to reach my online students, I needed obviously to do something online. And so I thought of inspirations online for me that I could follow somehow, and one of those was the Khan Academy. And the Khan Academy is this enormous website by Salman Khan, who's this Ivy League educated, amazingly smart, but also extremely down-to-earth person who just makes all of these extremely high-quality educational videos that are where you don't see him, you just see these words appearing basically on a whiteboard. And this is a program that OSU eCampus had as well. And Salman Khan with Khan Academy does videos about all different kinds of topics, from American history to mathematics, physics, language, all kinds of things. So I thought, wow, maybe I could do something like that, but for German grammar, and then make it a series, and then students could access it whenever. It would also be an opportunity for them to get to know me and my style and kind of have some instructor presence, even in an online classroom, and hey, my campus classes can use them too. So I went into the eCampus office and I said, I like Khan Academy, how can I do this for grammar? And they said, hey, we have this program called Camtasia where you can sit down with just a tablet, and then it's this program with a stylus where you just write and draw and are talking at the same time, and so you're mic'd. So that's what I did. I spent the last part of the summer and the whole fall term developing and doing these 33 videos. I was very nervous at first because you're talking and you're writing at the same time, and it's all being recorded and you can't make mistakes. But it got really easy, really fast, and really enjoyable. And I'm always adding to that series of videos, so it's going to get bigger and bigger depending on what I think students would benefit from. Oh, I have lots of experiences that I could share. One experience that I had when I first arrived in Austria and I first got my apartment that students find pretty amusing is I went grocery shopping, and like a typical American, I was used to going grocery shopping maybe every 2 weeks and getting a lot of food at once. I didn't have any bags with me. I just kind of went as my typical habitual American self, right? I didn't really know what to expect. So I had all my stuff and I went to this cash register. I noticed that the cashier was sitting down, and that was a little odd. And the cashier didn't look at me, didn't say hi, certainly didn't ask, "How are you?" Didn't smile at me. She just very, very, very actually shockingly quickly did her job of scanning everything. And I noticed that the area in which all of my goods were rapidly being thrown was extremely small, and in fact things were starting to almost fall off the edge because there wasn't any ledge. There wasn't any, it was just a very small space, and then certainly nobody was there to bag. And there were no bags. So I realized pretty quickly that I had to bag my own things while attempting to pay for it, while dealing with this, what I perceived to be a very unfriendly person. And then what ended up happening in the midst of all this stress was that a jar of jam that I'd purchased fell on the floor and broke open and spilled all over the place. Now, what we would expect in an American supermarket is for the receptionist, or not the receptionist, the cashier to be like, "No worries, I'll get that," or "Somebody will come clean that up," or "You go get yourself a new one," or something. Well, she just looked at me, looked down, continued with her job. I had no idea what to do. I had no idea if I had the right to go get a new one. I assumed I didn't. I just packed up and left, and that's really one of the first experiences in which I really clearly understood that I was in a very different place. I'm so happy to be here. I have wonderful colleagues and wonderful students.